Hello there, and welcome to episode 6 of the Unqualified Opinions podcast. I'm your host, Marco Yerkovich. I'm joined, as always, by Will Byerman.
I'm not running shit, but you can't tell that, eh?
And Tim Seipel.
What's grooving?
All right, so on today's episode, we've got a lot to discuss. The NBA is kicked off now. The NFL trade line is looming, and of course, we're going to do our weekly NFL power rankings, amongst other things. So let's move on to our first topic. A lot of moves at the deadline, which is October 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys want to discuss some of the big moves that occurred so far, of course, Emmanuel Sanders moved to the 49ers, Mohamed Sanu to the Patriots, Quandre Diggs to the Seahawks, and any other big moves that you guys want to discuss. So anything that stands out right away?
I got to say, the Emmanuel Sanders trade, it sure does look to me that the Broncos won this one. A third and a fourth round pick for Emmanuel Sanders, who has been on a decline in the past few years. I think that was the best possible trade that the Broncos could have gotten. I think it was a great move by them.
And I'm not saying I agree with Tim 100%. I just don't know if Emmanuel Sanders, I think he still could be a productive player in the league, but not for the Broncos.
I don't think...
I think the big mistake people make is if a player is bad on one team and they suddenly do start doing well for another team, usually they're like, oh, wow, they'd be like, Denver really lost this trade. Not necessarily. Sometimes, really, you just need to part ways, change the scenery for things to get fixed up. We'll say the Quandre Diggs one had me quite angry.
It's quite
really
perplexing. He started in every single game this season. He's really helped an above-average Lions defense, and it just really makes no sense, especially to move him for just a 5th and a 7th rounder next year.
I mean, to me, it makes sense.
As a miserable, depressed Detroit Lions fan, it just may say, like, okay, I thought we're trying to win right now. Like, we've had some losses, but, like, the Vikings game was the only loss we had where it wasn't like within like a 3-point loss. Are you kidding me? Like, you're really just gonna start like quitting now? It was unbelievable.
Yeah, as a Packers fan, I have to this is very similar to the Clinton Dix deal of last year, where we weren't sure whether or not Clinton Dix was actually going to be coming back on the offseason. And even though the pick that we got, I believe it was just one single 6th rounder from the Redskins, it was going to be more than a compensatory pick that we would have gotten if he would have walked away once after free agency began. So I think this Quandre Diggs deal is similar to that to an extent.
I mean, to an extent, though, the difference is like Clinton Diggs was a free agency flight risk in many senses. Like Diggs, he's a above average player. Pro Football Focus loves him, but like he's not that big of a household commodity name that like I think they had to be that worried about him leaving. It's just a perplexing move to me.
I mean, it to a certain extent, we don't know for sure what was going on in the Lions office and what was going on in the locker room. So we can't say that Quandre Diggs was not a possible flight risk once free agency started. But, I mean, I think in the end it may have been a smart move if he was going to walk away because they got more than they would have gotten if he had walked away and they would have gotten a compensatory pick.
And then talking probably the biggest move so far at the trade deadline, Mohamed Sanu moving to the Patriots for a 2nd-round pick. Now, obviously, I think it's a slight overpay for the Patriots, but within context, understanding the highly depleted New England receiving core on top of Josh Gordon now on IR and likely off the team, and still no N'Keal Harry until at least week 9 or 10. I think this is the right move for New England now and for the future. He only has a $6.5 million cap hit in the 2020 season, so I think this is a guy they can keep around not only this season but next season and use him quite effectively.
Yeah, it's a good move for New England. I mean, the one thing with Sanu is he was never bad, but like in Cincinnati and Atlanta, I always thought he'd end up being better. Again, he's by no means a bad player. He's a good starting wide receiver.
He's a 2nd or 3rd option for sure.
He's a good 2nd or 3rd option, but like I've always thought the potential was there for a number 1 option. I'm just kind of waiting to see that, and New England's good at bringing out the best in wide receivers, but we'll see what happens with Sanu. I think it's a good pickup, though, worth the risk.
Yeah, I think that they truly bring out the best in a lot of wide receivers just because of the team that they've built. And, I mean, it sure helps having a quarterback like Tom Brady. And to go into the whether or not Mohamed Sanu, why he hasn't been as good as we thought he might have been, he has been playing in the shadow of Julio Jones. So I think to a certain extent that might have affected his ability to outshine maybe other wide receivers or even being
for the past year and a half, also Calvin Ridley's shadow. But yeah, as
also
you said,
behind AJ Green with the Bengals too.
Right,
So.
and so obviously we're going to see Mohamed Sanu. Definitely his stock will rise now that he's with the Patriots, especially with how depleted the receiving core is. Another little bit, obviously, Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick are crafty offensive schemers, and Sanu all-time has a perfect completion percentage. He's known to throw the ball on trick plays, so I think that's definitely something to look out for outside of him playing his usual role as a really solid slot receiver. So let's move on to our Week 8 NFL Power Rankings. At 1, the New England Patriots, where they've been for the past 3 or 4 weeks. Slight movement at the top with the Saints, moving up to number 2 after a very convincing win against the Bears. Then the 49ers drop down to 3. They've just been not quite as effective as I've seen the Saints be. At 4, I've got the Green Bay Packers, who have overall been probably one of the most solid teams and a really impressive performance against the Raiders on Sunday. 5, I've got the Baltimore Ravens, who continue to really reinvent what an offense can look like in the NFL. 6, I've got the Minnesota Vikings. When Kirk Cousins is playing really well, this team is nearly unstoppable. They have some of the best position groups in the league. 7, I've got the Buffalo Bills, a really solid defense, but I'm not really sure what the offense can be. Same with the Houston Texans. I know they lost to the Colts on Sunday, but they were really depleted injury-wise, but I think they're a really solid roster overall. 9, I've got the Carolina Panthers, another solid defense, just not sure where the offense can be, whether it's led by Kyle Allen or Cam Newton, but of course the MVP candidate in McCaffrey. And then 10, I've got the Colts, who even without Andrew Luck are 4-2 and contenders to make the AFC playoffs. Honorable mentions, I've got the Cowboys and the Chiefs. Your guys' thoughts on that top 10?
I mean, as always, I find myself weirdly drawn to the back half of your top 10, but I think the big question for me with the Panthers is what did they do when Cam Newton's ready to come back? Because he's obviously a much better and much more high ceiling player than Kyle Allen, but I think McCaffrey's the best player on that team at this point. I mean,
sure.
Aside from Kuechly, McCaffrey's their best player on offense by a mile. And for whatever reason, when Kyle Allen's in, they get more out of McCaffrey than when Newton's in. So I'm not sure what they do there.
Are we really sure that Kyle Allen has a lower ceiling than Cam Newton? I'm pretty sure Cam Newton has peaked, and we've seen the most of him. And I think actually Cam Newton, this might be slightly controversial, but I think Cam Newton's on the decline. And so I think it might be time for Carolina to be moving on and looking for another guy. Now, if that's not Kyle Allen, he had a good test run. We saw a lot out of him, and he'll definitely get space elsewhere in the league. But I think they probably should move on if they want to remain contenders.
I mean, I agree with most of that to an extent, but I mean, Kyle Allen, and I'm a fan, but like, I can't see him blowing up for like 350 yards, 3 scores, 4 scores. Cam Newton, he has some weird lows nowadays, but he's still more likely to go off for an insane carry the team performance than Allen is. One thing with Allen, though, is I do think even if he isn't the guy in Carolina at the end, I think he's close to like your next A.J. McCarron. I mean, he obviously didn't get out after all, but just one of those really high-end backups who's young enough that you're going to be like, okay, he's worth a shot. Because I did a little background on Kyle Allen, and he never really consistently even played in college. He bounced around from A&M in Houston, beat Kyler Murray and Kenny Hill a bit, lost the job to Kyler Murray, won it back, whole deal there. He didn't get really a ton of time to prove himself in college, so the potential of a high prospect or of a top prospect like he was is still there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him.
Yeah, so any other issues with the top 10 between you two?
Yeah, so I mean, I have 3, which is a lot. I believe that the 49ers should be given the same look as the Patriots are. The 49ers are undefeated. They've proven themselves over and over again, and I believe that the 49ers, until they lose, until proven wrong, I believe that they should be the number 2 ahead of the Saints. Now to move,
right, that's the philosophy I was operating under with New England at 1 and the Saints at 2, with the 49ers at 2. But moving the Saints up to 2 is merely because while we have discussed this ad nauseum, that the schedules of these 2 undefeated teams is quite weak, to be quite honest with you. New England's performance against those teams has been far more consistent and dominant than the 49ers have been.
The 49ers defense has allowed or has forced 3 and outs in 50% of the drives against them. 50%. That's compared to the New England Patriots' 44%. So the offense has been struggling, and I believe that just like the Patriots, the defense is the game for the 49ers. Now, also, I would also take a look at Kirk Cousins and the Vikings and look at the three teams that they have faced. They faced the Giants, which their secondary is not much to talk about. The Eagles, which, see previous comment, there's not much to talk about. And as well as the Lions. They just haven't really seen a lot of real high competition.
Hey, the Eagles and Lions are both two teams that are pushing for the playoffs and solid contenders.
Pushing for the playoffs does not mean that they have a good secondary. I think that's something that is an assumption there. Kirk Cousins has been able to do well against struggling secondaries.
Right,
he should be able to do better.
Now, because Kirk Cousins is playing slightly weaker opponents, weaker defenses, he is playing like Joe Montana. Then when
I wouldn't compare to Joe Montana.
It's hyperbole.
Not even close to Joe Montana.
Right, and so
in these performances, he's been playing ridiculous. But yes, you're right. When he faces a stronger defense, he really struggles. He is really terrible. But then it's when he struggles, you really see how great the rest of this Minnesota team is, because they're still competing with those elite teams, even when he is playing like complete garbage.
To a certain extent, I would agree.
They're probably top 5 in every position group on the field outside of quarterback.
So my last issue that I have with the top 10 is the Chiefs. Where the heck are the Chiefs? And with
their defensive
Patrick
stats
Mahomes is coming back. With Patrick Mahomes coming back,
it's a fact.
They are a top 10 team.
Right, and he's out right now.
With
and
the defense they have and the offense that they will have. They're a borderline
top 10 team. They're a borderline top 10 team with Patrick Mahomes. They're somewhere in the vicinity of 6 to 10. If they hit a stride and their defense starts actually stopping people, they're definitely a contender for that top 5. But right now, you need to stop people to be a top 10 team in the NFL, and just right now they just can't do it.
Let me hit you with a quick take, actually, though, because we're just talking about how the Vikings are struggling. Obviously, with the Jaguars and Panthers, we have a situation where there's, I'd say, 4 pretty solid quarterbacks who I think I'd take over Kirk Cousins right now.
Yeah.
And 2 of those guys aren't going to have a starting job soon. Should the Vikings look at getting a Minshew or a Kyle Allen, especially one of those young, cheap guys?
Yes.
Say they're going to back up Cousins, but then end up starting them?
I'm not sure who's going to eat that Cousins contract. There's very few options around the league of teams that either don't have a starting quarterback already or are willing to take that cap hit for someone of his caliber.
I would not pay Kirk Cousins for another contract.
My thing,
if they're able to make it to last contract, if he continues to struggle against good defenses and to show how mediocre he is, because that is the word that continues to come up when you talk about Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is a mediocre quarterback,
right?
And he's going to stay at this stable, steady, horrible pace.
First, Cousins looks like a genius for getting that guaranteed deal. Like,
really?
Yeah.
And that's the idea of the
he's totally saved his job
right
here.
now.
And then my thing, though, is, I mean, you're not going to be able to trade him, but the Vikings, their time, it's now. They have the talent for it everywhere. As you said, they have
a top
elite position, elite at every position group except quarterback. Is it time for them to try to get an Allen or a Minshew or a Foles even? And
that's
just
really interesting.
Just
idea.
Dalvin Cook is better
just
than Ezekiel
man
Elliott.
up. Is it time to just man up, bench Kirk Cousins, keep him on, keep paying him, but just have like a Kyle Allen or a Minshew, a cheap guy who's going to make some better plays, come in and try to carry things?
So a lot of things going on in the NFL right now. A lot of quarterback issues throughout the league. A lot of teams, struggling to work into that top 10, and especially that very elite top 5, and really even that top 4 that contains the Patriots, Saints, 49ers, and Packers that have really solidified themselves as the top 4 teams in the NFL. So we're going to move on to some NBA discussion. Klay Thompson out for the season. The Clippers won the first game of the season. They beat the Los Angeles Lakers. Is that more than just one game? And of course, Zion Williamson out 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury. What that means for his Rookie of the Year campaign and his injury past as a whole. Your guys' thoughts on those topics?
I mean, Zion Williamson, rough for the league, first of all. I mean, the first game they played this season was Raptors-Pelicans. Fantastic game, by the way. Pascal Siakam, 34 and 18. Fred VanVleet, 34. Fantastic basketball game, but you can't help but feel a little cheated because the goal of having the Pelicans of all teams play opening night was they're like, okay, they're going to get Zion out here. We're going to see what they can do, but that didn't happen.
They were still able to compete.
I don't think it's bad for Zion. He's going to get more time to work on his body and just make sure he's 100% healthy. And Pelicans are obviously trying to be cautious here. It's good for the rest of the team to get some playing time, work on some chemistry before he comes in, takes a lot of the minutes and stuff away. But I mean, for the NBA brand in general, it's kind of rough. They didn't want this.
Yeah, it's definitely hard on the NBA brand, but I just like to take a look at the long-term effect or the idea that this might have on Zion Williamson.
Right, he has a history of these kinds of injuries. He has a history of knee injuries,
and the reason why is because of his body weight. We have never seen somebody like this, built like this, weighing 284 pounds, and that's the type of weight that you see in a center. And what a lot of centers struggle with is their knee issues and foot issues, etc. So I think this really affects the timetable of how long can Zion Williamson play in the NBA if he's forced under these conditions to play with his current body weight. And I'm not sure if he'll have a long NBA career because he just can't stay at this level.
I don't want to jump to that conclusion because he's going to get on the weight program. He's going to be discussing this with medical doctors. There might be some genetic issues with just how he's built and how his legs are angled and things like that. And that's obviously a bigger topic, but I think more about the injuries, how we were discussing. Something Will said, he said Zach Randolph when you were discussing that. However, Zach Randolph did not have the explosive jumping ability of Michael Jordan.
He didn't even jump when he was shooting jump shots.
Right, that's the problem. We have, as you said, we have not seen someone of his size who can play the way he can, and it'll be interesting to see whether this becomes a reoccurring issue. I mean, he had some injury problems at Duke. Is someone of this size and his ability, is that sustainable in the speed and the way the NBA is played today? That's a really big issue. Your guys' thoughts on the Klay Thompson injury? He's reportedly out for the entirety of this next season. Now, Steve Kerr did not clarify whether that meant the postseason or not. So your guys' thoughts on that whole issue?
Handle it with overwhelming caution. I mean, I know the Warriors, one of the best teams in NBA history, honestly, at this point. Steve Kerr, incredible. Steph Curry's incredible. Draymond Green's not a huge fan of him, but I can definitely respect everything he's done. He's a great player. But, I mean, it's going to be a rough year. It'd be a rough year, weird year, even with Klay back. And I think since he's going to be gone, don't rush him back in here. The Warriors are good enough. They're well coached, and they're a good free agent draw. If you keep Klay, if you're cautious with Klay, maybe don't play him at all. You'll get good free agents, you'll reload, and then you'll have him all the way healthy for next season. I know it's going to be difficult, but I really think the Warriors should just ease off a bit. Yeah, make sure he's ready for next season.
After the KD thing, they're never going to rush a player back from injury again. But moving on to the Clippers-Lakers game, to me this game felt like a little bit more than a game. Partially it's because it's opening night and because of all the new players. It feels like the start of a new era in Los Angeles basketball and for the Clippers organization. To me, and I know there's a prestige and a celebrity and the winning factor of the Lakers' history and organization, but to me, I think this is the beginning of the Clippers attempting to at least ascend that Los Angeles Lakers mountain of prestige and popularity. Will they ever mount it? I don't know, but they're going to chip away at it with the success they'll have.
Look, the Clippers, they've kind of been a joke for a long time. I know I see a lot of kind of memes out there about how oh my God, Lob City Clippers, they're the best team in recent years to not win a title. I wouldn't even call them that. They were a good playoff. They were a good they're a good regular season team. They're a lot of fun to watch, but really couldn't get it done in the playoffs. But the Clippers, Doc Rivers himself said it. If Kawhi went to the Lakers, he jokingly said he would have had to move to Seattle. Is he wrong? The Clippers get boxed in and kicked around enough without if they had Kawhi Leonard on the Lakers, what would the Clippers ever do to stay relevant? The Clippers are really kind of fighting for their identity and their place in their hometown, and they need to get it done this year.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I think this is that was a little bit bigger than a game to show that they're not going to be pushed around by the Lakers.
Right, exactly. And you can't really look at this game to see what the whole season will look like. And if you look at their injury list, you have Kyle Kuzma out. He did not play at all yesterday.
But also Paul George for the Clippers.
True, but also Rajon Rondo. And here's my thing with that. LeBron James is not the person that you really want at the point guard spot. He's not as efficient. He kind of struggles in that spot, and he's a better 4. He's a better 3 player, and truly, I think that they're going to need a true point guard on their team to see a really successful year. I mean, they're already going to have a successful year, but to get to the finals and to win the finals, I think that they will need a true point guard at the helm and not LeBron James.
Yeah, so I think that's the smaller scale look at this game, that the Clippers are definitely the more put together team. Even without Paul George, they seem to have a greater control. But I think this could eventually turn into a battle for not necessarily Los Angeles, but at least for national prominence for the Clippers to finally gain some respect and to challenge, the national view of what the Clippers organization is. All right, so we're going to move on to our next main topic, which is a look at the college football playoff picture. I'm going to welcome in Paul Hires and Jared DeHaan into the show. We're just going to really quick take a look at our top 4 and then also the guys we have just on the outside, the 5th and 6th spots in our playoff pictures. I think we're just going to go around spot to spot. So, Paul, really quick, who do you have as your 6th spot in the college football playoff picture?
So just to be clear, this is picture, not predictions.
Right. This is if it happened right here today, who would you have in? We're not projecting forward as to, I think that Georgia's going to beat Florida and things like that. Yeah, we're definitely just looking at right here, right now.
Okay. Number 1 is probably going to go with Alabama. 2, Ohio State. 3, Oklahoma. 4, Clemson, and then probably 5, I'd go with LSU, and 6 with Penn State.
Really? Okay, Jared, let's take a look at your playoff picture.
My 1 is Alabama. My 2 is Ohio State. My 3 is Ohio State. Then Clemson. Then Oklahoma 5 and Penn State 6.
Okay, my number 1 is Alabama by a hair. I have LSU, and 3rd, I have Ohio State. Those top 3 have really cemented themselves. 4, I have to put Oklahoma. 5, I have to have Clemson on the outside. They just really haven't performed the way I'd like them to. And then a close 6 is Penn State. So your guys' thoughts, Paul? You have LSU at 5.
Yeah. So that would be, as of right now, I would say 5. Now, if they're able to beat Alabama, I'd go ahead and put them at number 1 right now. Let's go ahead and hear from Will now.
I mean, honestly, you guys really kind of got it, though. There's about 6 teams, I'd say, left in here. For my personal rankings,
At least undefeated teams.
Alabama for sure is up there. I like LSU in number 2, Marco. Love LSU, love Joe Burrow. Ohio State's in there, but for me, 4, I don't care, man. Give me Clemson. Give me Trevor Lawrence. Let's see what happens. Oklahoma at 5th. Penn State at 6. It's interesting to see the Nittany Lions stick around there. Don't know if they'll do it for much longer. They have to play a bunch of good teams still.
Yeah, I'm going to take a different turn, and I'm going to say Ohio State is number 1.
That's not that crazy of a pick.
Well,
they have played very solid this
Correct,
year.
and I think they're going to be challenged by, the last half of their schedule is going to include the Big Ten championship game, and I think whoever they face in the Big Ten championship game is going to be really difficult, and if they prove themselves in that game, I think that they have one of the best offenses and the best defense in the entire NCAA.
Yeah,
And, that's why
their schedule's kind of tough,
though.
though. I mean, they do still have Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan, and then probably Wisconsin again in the Big Ten championship.
Correct,
game.
and that's why I think strength of schedule is going to come into play here, and I think Ohio State is going to beat those teams. But I think because they're facing such great teams in the Big Ten, you're going to see them get a little bit of an advantage because of the type of teams that they're facing.
So we do have our layout here of our top 6, and it's kind of we're just kind of going off right now, but looking forward, we are saying that, the Clemsons and the LSUs and the Penn States are just a little bit on the outside. So your guys' thoughts on what needs to happen or what scenarios could leave those teams out, looking at the fact that many of these teams could win out, who makes the playoff in that scenario?
Yeah, going off of what Tim said, I definitely think that Ohio State is potentially up for that number 1 spot if they do win out. I just think, just from the last few years, seeing how the committees favored the SEC and their, tough schedules, I don't know if I see Ohio State going above an undefeated SEC team. That being said, LSU, if they went out, they're number one. I mean, you can't lie with their schedule.
Yeah.
And
especially you talk about the SEC schedule that LSU had to face, but then, of course, the non-conference game against Texas. I mean, they've probably played one of the toughest schedules. So what you're looking at is the winner of Alabama LSU that would likely win the SEC, the winner of Ohio State Penn State that's likely winning the Big Ten, and then after that, an undefeated Oklahoma, possibly an undefeated Clemson, then possibly a one-loss from those Ohio State Penn State and LSU Alabama games.
I mean, it's kind of just the normal thing at this point, but it's going to come down to Alabama and then one-loss SEC school, and do they make it in against an Oklahoma or an Ohio State that's won their conference? And that's always a tough argument to make and expand the playoffs.
That is something we will get into in the coming weeks, especially when the first college football playoff rankings come out. We will discuss that in depth. But at this point, we're dealing with 4 teams. Right now, the field is a little too big to be making these predictions. As we saw last week with Wisconsin, any given Saturday, this whole field can change. So let's move on to our final topic of the day, our weekly pick'em. So our first game of the day is number 13 Wisconsin at number 3 Ohio State, Saturday at 11 a.m. At Fox. Before I go through everybody's pick, I'm just going to announce everybody's ranking so far. Paul did the due diligence of going back through every single episode and discussing everyone's rankings.
MVP.
So Paul, who is in first place at a record of 20-8. Paul, what is your pick for that game?
If you would have asked me a week ago, I probably would have been on the fence about a lot of stuff in this game. But after watching Wisconsin on the road last week, they didn't look too good. And, I mean, it's in the horseshoe, and Ohio State's undefeated. I just don't see them losing this game. It'll be close, but I got Ohio State.
All right, so Paul with Ohio State. Will, you have the third best record amongst us at 13-10. Your thoughts on the Wisconsin-Ohio State game?
I mean, Illinois beat Wisconsin. Illinois is the Jared DeHaan of college football teams. It's a rough one for Wisconsin. I think they'll play better than we expect them to, just to try to overcome that loss, but I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State.
All right. Tim, you have the worst record among us.
Yeah, I do.
You know what? It'll get better. We've had some tough games to pick. You're 7-9 overall.
I mean, I'm the person that's taking some risks over here, so.
All right, so who do you have in this one?
Well, I'm not going to take the risk in this one. I think Ohio State is definitely going to overcome Wisconsin. I think, obviously, home field advantage helps, and I just don't see Wisconsin getting any passing game going on against the Ohio State defense, and I think they're going to be able to predict that Wisconsin's going to try to run the ball right down their throats, and I just don't see Ohio State not stopping Wisconsin.
Okay, and then Jared, who has an overall record of 15-13, and just talking about college football picks, Jared, 75%. That is the highest pick for any sport amongst all of us on college football. So what's your pick on this one?
Definitely not Wisconsin. Definitely Ohio State. I mean, my Illinois Fighting Illini kind of beat Wisconsin. So if Illinois could beat Wisconsin, Ohio State definitely can. I think it's at least a 3-touchdown game.
Okay, well, I have the second highest overall record amongst you guys, 17-11. I'm also going to have to go with Ohio State on that one. So that's a clean sweep. So that's a little bit dangerous for Ohio State there since we've all picked them. So now moving on to the second game, number 9 Auburn at LSU, Saturday 2:30 on CBS. Paul, your thoughts on that one?
I respect Auburn. They've played some good games this season, but right now LSU just looks unstoppable. That offense, I don't know. I mean, the highest scoring offense I think they were last week. I don't know if they still are. They struggled a little bit against Mississippi State, but until this team lose, I think they're proving themselves, and I've got LSU.
All right, Will, who do you have in the matchup of the Tigers?
Yeah, I agree with Paul. Bo Nix especially is a fun player to watch at Auburn. Auburn's got some good stuff going on, but Joe Burrow, man. I've been a big Joe Burrow supporter on the show and out in the streets too. Joe Burrow's my guy. LSU's my team.
All right, Tim, who do you have in this one?
I think it's pretty clear. I'm going to have to go with LSU. I think the defense is just too good, and I think the offense is just going to steamroll right past Auburn.
All right, Jared, who do you have in this one, Mr. College Football Expert?
I'm going with LSU. I think it's an easy one. I think Joe Burrow, and I think it's going to be a blowout.
Mighty fine pick there, Mr. DeHaan. I'm going to go with LSU as well. So another dangerous pick as it's a clean sweep for the LSU Tigers. So our last college football pick of the day, number 8, Notre Dame, at number 19, Michigan, Saturday, 6:30 on ABC. Paul, who do you have in that one?
Yeah, I think really this is the closest game we've seen. I mean, at least in our pick'ems, but not really the top teams. I don't think either of these teams make the playoffs, but I think Notre Dame goes into the big house and gets the win in front of the nation.
All right, Will, who do you have in this one?
My feelings about Michigan are well known. Notre Dame.
All right, Tim, who do you have in this matchup?
Michigan's offense is awful.
Say that again.
Michigan's offense is awful. So, I personally think that they're not going to really be able to compete on that level with Notre Dame. And Michigan has just not been as good as people would have hoped. So I'm going to have to go with Notre Dame.
All right, Mr. DeHaan, you going to pick the upset this week?
I'm not. Michigan's offense is awful, and I think Notre Dame wins easy.
And I picked Notre Dame once again, so it's a third clean sweep and another very dangerous pick as we're all going to go with the Fighting Irish on that one. So let's move on to some college football, or from the college football picks into the NFL. We've got the Carolina Panthers at the San Francisco 49ers. Sunday, 3 o'clock on Fox. Who do you have in that one, Paul?
The 49ers, as we know, are undefeated, and it seems like I've been picking up against them the whole season. But, I mean, you look at what they did last week, and I don't see, 9-0 against the Redskins.
In a hurricane.
Good defense, right? But, this Panthers offense, I don't see them losing. And I got to pick against the 49ers again. I got Carolina.
All right, a gutsy pick there from Paul. Will, do you disagree?
Totally same boat as Paul, where I'm like, okay, I've kind of doubted the Niners a lot, and that hasn't worked out well for me. And to a big extent, I really want to agree with Paul. McCaffrey's one of my favorite players to watch in the entire NFL, but the Niners, they're just been a team that gets it done, no matter how ugly the result, and there really is something to be said for being able to pull that off, so I'll go with the 49ers.
All right, who do you have in this one, Tim?
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with the 49ers. Personally, I think that they are a great team. I think the defense has just really shown that they are top-notch. I think the addition with Emmanuel Sanders might help the passing game that they have, and I think the 49ers win pretty I'd say it's a touchdown game, touchdown difference.
All right, Jared, who do you have in this matchup?
I have 49ers as well. I just see no way how I can go against them. They haven't shown me anything this year that they can't get it done. So until they prove me otherwise, 49ers.
I think we've talked about this, especially in the power rankings, pretty much every week. The 49ers have not exactly faced the toughest competition. The Panthers are a really solid team, and I'm feeling it, and I could be completely wrong, but just my gut says to go with the Panthers right now. They're 5-0 with Kyle Allen, looking to get 6 in a row against the 49ers, and I have to pick the Panthers on that one. So next up, we've got the Green Bay Packers at the Kansas City Chiefs, Sunday, 7:15 on NBC. Paul, who do you have in this one?
Well, I tell you what, boys, this would be one heck of a Super Bowl. Just seeing Mahomes and Rodgers go at it back and forth. But that being said, Mahomes isn't in this game. As much as I love Kansas City, I got to go with the Packers.
All right, Will?
As much as I want to go with Matt Moore, just because for the sake of going for Matt Moore, I think the Packers are going to win this, but I think it's going to be close. I don't think the Packers are going to run away with this one by any means.
Tim?
In short, Aaron Rodgers is a bad man. My man scored 6 touchdowns last week with 429 passing yards. He is a bad man.
That wasn't
and I gotta
short.
tell you,
That was not short at all.
He is gonna show
He's still going.
up on Sunday
All right,
Night
Jared,
Football. Primetime,
Jared.
baby.
All right, let's
He
wrap
is
it up.
going
All right,
to
Jared,
kick some
your
butt.
pick. Jared, your pick.
Just for the sake that they all picked the Packers, I'm going to go with Matt Moore and the Kansas City Chiefs.
That is very gutsy. That's how you climb the pick standings and catch up to me and Paul.
I mean, we all picked the same college football games, so I mean, I have to try to get up
gotta
somehow.
differentiate somehow. I really want to pick Matt Moore and the Chiefs and Andy Reid and his play calling prowess, but I really can't. This Packers defense has really got it put together, and Aaron Rodgers is, as Tim so eloquently put it, a pretty bad man, and he's playing pretty well right now. So I got to go with the Packers on that one. So that's it for episode 6 of the Unqualified Opinions podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time.